Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome back to Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael Clogs. In Huntsville, Ontario, Scott Aitchison, the Conservative MP for Parry Sound, Muskoka, Ontario, and former mayor of Huntsville, launches his campaign for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. Aitchison joins others in the Conservative Party leadership race, along with Pierre, Leslyn, Lewis, and others, to try to see who will succeed Erin O'Toole as the Conservative Party leader. Also, we have today NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh holds a news conference on Parliament Hill to discuss his party's opposition. The NDP is urging the federal government to expand its excess profits tax proposal to include oil and gas companies and big box stores. During the 2021 federal election campaign, Liberals had proposed to raise corporate taxes and on big banks, insurance companies by 3% on earnings above $1 billion. The NDP leader also asked about work stoppage on CP Rail employees, Canada defense spending on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And MPs were asked about the CP Rail workage stoppage, which includes more than 3,000 workers are off the job today after railway and the union representing conductors, engineers, and train yard workers failed to reach an agreement, which the contract deadline was March 20th, 2020. So we'll see how that actually pans out, because railways and trucks are how most of our goods reach our stores. They are part of a network that moves goods back and forth from one coast to another coast to possibly a third coast. Trains and trucks, if they don't run, we start to see shortages of supplies in our stores. We start to see shortages of supplies for manufacturing, and overall goods could see a price increase. So let's listen to today's episode, starting with Scott Aitchison. Jagmeet Singh will be next, and then we'll listen to what the MPs on Parliament Hill have to say about the CN Rail stoppage of work for the conductors, train yard workers.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. If we can have your attention, we will start this day. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our exciting announcement from our own Scott Aitchison, MP for Parry Sound, Muskoka. Yay! Happy spring, everyone. The first day of spring. So with that comes new birth and a sense of growth. And I think that we will see that growth in the future as we move forward. With that, we can't help remember our friends in Ukraine who we wish for peace and world peace. For those of you who don't know me, I am Fran Coleman, and I am your MC today. As a former colleague of Scott for the town of Huntsville and the District of Muskoka for 20 years, I have seen Scott's leadership skills firsthand in many projects. It is wonderful to look out and see so many familiar faces that have turned out to support Scott as our member for Parry Sound, Muskoka, in his bid for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. Yay! I won't mention any names. I probably can't see you anyways, but you all know who you are and certainly have worked a lot with Scott over the years. As a district councillor in 1994, Scott and I both ran to seek election as district councillors. Whether we ran for or against each other, we were both successful. Scott was this handsome 21-year-old, bright, articulate, and I'm going to call him a kid. A kid that I called Scotty. Scott approached his new role with vim and vigor and supported me on many projects as I did him. Scott loves this community, his riding, and he is passionate and a loyal Canadian. Scott has always had a longing desire to contribute to his community, which he has successfully achieved over the years as both a councillor, a deputy mayor, and a mayor for the last 20 years. However, Scott believes we can do better. Scott listens and gains respect while doing so. He is a consensus builder who will lead and make Canada a better place. Scott's speaking skills are second to none, as we have seen in the House of Commons in the last little while, and I'm sure many of you have heard Scott speak. He comes across as a pro. I have always envied Scott's speaking skills. They are second to none. If you would like to renew your membership or make a donation to the party, we have people here in the room. There's Kirsten, Nolan, and Liam. Where are you? Okay, good. So make sure that you get your memberships current, because that's the only way you will be able to vote for Scott or any member in the election. And I think that cutoff date is June 3rd. Am I correct? But let's do it soon and early, and the team are here to do that for you. So, without any further ado, Scott has been known in the past to reach out to other members, young members, who are running for positions in the political realm. And I think he has been known to reach out to his MP, Eric Melello, from Kenora. And Eric is here today. He made the trek all the way here to support he's a member of Parliament, to support his colleague Scott in his bid for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. And with that, let's welcome Eric, MP Melello, to the stage.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's great to see so many folks out this afternoon, and it's great to be able to join you. As Fran mentioned, I'm Eric Melello. I am the Member of Parliament for the riding of Kenora, and I do have enough self-awareness to realize I'm not the one you're all waiting to hear from today, so I will try my best to be brief, but we know when you put a microphone in front of a politician, it's sometimes hard for us to give that up. So my apologies in advance. I just wanted to make that clear. But in all seriousness, I am incredibly proud to be here to support a good friend and colleague, Scott Aitchison. Now, I join you today as a Member of Parliament from Northern Ontario, as the youngest member of the current Canadian Parliament. as a Conservative, but most importantly, I join you here today as a fellow Canadian that is concerned about the state of affairs in this country and the direction that we are headed. And I just want to talk a bit about why I decided to be here today, because I am concerned. I'm concerned with crippling debt, federal debt that is threatening the sustainability of our government services and social programs for future generations. I'm concerned with the war in Ukraine that is threatening democracies around the world. And I'm concerned with the hyper-partisan political rhetoric that is gridlocking our politics here at home. It's evident that we need a serious leader. We need someone who can step up to face these challenges head-on, unite our party, and guide our team to victory whenever the next election comes. And I am joining you here today because I know that Scott has the poise and the determination to be that leader and get the job done for Canada. As those in this room know, Scott has dedicated his life to public service for the town of Huntsville, for Parry Sound, Muskoka, and now for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. He's achieved his success by building up those around him and finding consensus. And I have seen firsthand from our time in Ottawa his ability to build bridges in caucus and across the aisle in order to deliver results for his riding and for Canadians. He has a relentless focus on the issues that matter, whether it's locally, like the cost of living with housing skyrocketing, or increasing our business competitiveness, or broader global issues like climate change and affirming Canada's place in the world. I know Scott will have the right approach, and I know he will get the job done. Simply put, I'm here because the prospect of Scott's leadership gives me hope for the future, and I'm proud to be a part of his team. So without any further delay, let me introduce to you the man who I know will leave a more prosperous future for my generation and those to come, the man that I am proud to support as the next leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Scott Aitchison.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to Fran Coleman. Sweet Fran Coleman. She taught me how to be a human being way back when. Thank you, Franny. And to my dear friend Eric Malillo, my colleague from Kenora, thank you for being here. It's not easy to get from Kenora to Huntsville. You should all know that, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Eric. And thank you to all of you. You know, it's been my privilege to serve our communities over the years, and I've never forgotten the honor it is to represent my hometown and the people that make this such an incredible place to live. You know, Parry Sound, Muskoka, here we show up for each other. Our word is our bond. Neighbors look out for each other. If it's broken, we fix it. And when something's bothering us, we don't just sit back and complain. We get up and take action, and we fix it. I've never forgotten the values that I learned here, and I continue to fight for them in Parliament today. Today, our country faces serious problems, and we need the right approach to solve them. War threatens democracies everywhere. Our economy no longer works for the people who power it. There are countless families who can barely get by, despite putting in a hard day's work. The next generation is uncertain about the world that they will inherit. Climate change, the housing crisis, a failing healthcare system, all fill them with anxiety. Solving the challenges of our time requires more than politics as usual. More partisan bickering is simply not the answer. Solving problems requires real leadership. I've been in Parliament now 2 terms, and I am dismayed by the energy wasted on political games instead of getting things done. What's missing in Ottawa is leadership. Right here in Huntsville is where I learned what real leadership is. I learned to inspire the team around me. I learned to inspire a community and empower citizens with an open and transparent government. This is the place that taught me the importance of dialogue, of respectful debate, and the remarkable possibilities that can come from listening to those we might disagree with. Today, Canada needs the kind of inclusive, engaged, and compassionate leadership that I learned right here. And so for that reason, it is fitting that here in this place, that today I formally announce my candidacy to be the next leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. It is humbling to be surrounded by so many neighbors today, people who have supported me over the years and taught me, mentored me. But of course today, many are meeting me for the very first time. I'm sure many Canadians might be wondering about the audacity of some dude from rural northern Ontario thinking he has any business running to be leader of anything. So, let me tell you a little bit about my journey to this stage today. I was born right here in Huntsville, Ontario. I was raised in a Jehovah's Witness faith, but at the age of 15, I sought a different path and left home to find the faith that guides me to this very day. I didn't really have much of a plan at the time. I just knew I had to make the move. And of course, in typical Canadian fashion, neighbors took me in, gave me a hand up, and made me part of their family. But it was not just the Coop family that took me in. This community rallied around me and supported me, always made sure I was okay. I was literally raised by my community. And then at the age of 21, I was elected to Huntsville Town Council. I believed then, as I do now, that public office should be about rolling up your sleeves and solving problems. It should be about coming together to give voice to every citizen, proposing solutions to improve the lives of those we serve. In the decades that followed, the community trusted me to serve many more terms as a local and regional councillor, then as deputy mayor, and finally as mayor. Here's the thing about municipal politics. It's close to the people, and it is about building consensus to get things done. It's about putting words into action. We work towards a common goal and relentlessly focus on breaking down barriers to find solutions. That is the right approach, and it is missing in Ottawa. You know, as mayor, we made our community more resilient, more inclusive, and more engaged. But we did it as a team, as a council, as a staff at Town Hall, and as a group of committed citizens. We debated, we often disagreed, but we found solutions, and we always moved our community forward. Canadians are sick and tired of the partisan gridlock and the ideological entrenchment. The antics you see in question period, that's not what Canadians want. They want leaders to actually get things done. Canadians are yearning for someone to step up and take action on the challenges of our time. Canadians need us to take the fight to inflation, to help families struggling to make ends meet. Canadians are crying out for us to demonstrate the drive and ability to get projects built and services delivered. And today, I know many Canadians are wondering why places like Europe are relying on a tyrant like Vladimir Putin for their energy needs, while their own government makes it more difficult every single year to get ethically produced Canadian energy to new markets. You know, this government has announced billions upon billions of dollars for the housing crisis, and yet today there are more Canadians than ever who are desperate for a secure, safe bed to sleep in at night. And there are many more Canadians who've simply given up on the dream of home ownership. Announcements are not enough. While I was mayor of Huntsville, our council worked with builders to get more homes built. This is the kind of leadership we need all across Canada. And Canadians are counting on leadership that will take our national security and international commitments seriously. Leadership that will ensure our Army, our Navy, our Air Force are capable and ready and have the tools required to protect those who serve us and to defend our commitment to freedom and democracy around the world. This is the right approach. And as we emerge from the dark shadows of COVID-19, Canadians know now all too well that our healthcare system has been neglected for too long. The challenge will not be easy, but the status quo is a recipe for more Canadians needlessly suffering. And we Conservatives must be the ones who finally make the federal government the full partner it promised to be with our provinces and finally fix healthcare. Canadians want leadership that restores hope in the future, leadership that inspires us to fulfill that unwritten commandment that we leave our country better for the next generation. Le leadership ne sème pas la division et la colère. Le leadership inspire et unit. Leadership does not sow division and anger. Leadership inspires and unites. And if we are to succeed, I need your help. We must show the country what leadership can accomplish. Canadians are counting on Conservatives to win the next election, and we need a leader who will grow our team and bring new members to the Conservative benches in Ottawa to get the job done. And the only way we are going to win in every part of this country is through our unity. By respecting each other, by talking about the big ideas, and demonstrating to Canadians that we have the commitment, the courage, the character to be trusted to govern and lead. Et nous gagnons la confiance des Canadiens si nous sommes fidèles à notre parole, cohérents dans nos principes et honnêtes les uns envers les autres. And we will earn the trust of Canadians if we are true to our word, consistent in our principles, and honest with each other. When I say I'm opposed to a carbon tax, it's not because it's politically convenient. It's because I represent hard-working people who cannot afford to heat their homes and put healthy food on the table. These are people that can't afford to wait for a small refund at the end of the year. We must not make the most vulnerable in our society carry the heaviest burden when it comes to tackling climate change. I ask you to join our team, and we will help Canadians reduce their carbon footprint, not just punish them. And our party has a proud tradition of being a voice for freedom of religion around the world. We must have the courage of our convictions to do the same here at home in every province and territory. This includes the right of every single Canadian to proudly wear a cross or a hijab, a turban or a kippah at their place of work. Bill 21 is wrong, and we must stand up to it. And if our party is to be the party of the rule of law, then we must stand up for the rule of law always, not only when it's convenient to our political narrative. We need a leader who will respect all Conservatives. Diversity of thought is what makes our party strong, so long as we are prepared to respect each other. All Conservatives will have a genuine seat at the table under my leadership, and I invite all Canadians to join us. You know, as leader, my most important job will be to build and empower our team, all Conservatives, all Conservative MPs, to thrive and achieve. And the hard work we will do together to elect more Conservatives will deliver results. And that success will determine who the next Prime Minister of Canada will be. And that's why this isn't about me. It's about all of us working together, because that is the right approach. At my core, I'm a leader who believes in common sense solutions to fixing problems. I believe in the value of teamwork and collaboration. I believe in the power of new ideas and fresh energy. And I don't believe you have to attack someone else to make your point. I believe that winning, merely for the sake of winning, is not worthy of a great nation. It's not worthy of those who built this country, heroes whose shoulders we stand on today. It's not worthy of you. Canadians are calling on us to do better, to be better. Leaders are people who don't appeal to the lowest common denominator, but seek to raise it. We have to up the stakes and raise the bar and show the world that Canada's best days still lie ahead. We must be the generation that finally ensures every single Canadian has access to clean drinking water, whether they live on a reserve or not. We must be the generation that understands our environment is our economy, and our economy is our environment. Nous devons être la génération qui rétablira la réputation du Canada dans tout le monde. We must be the generation that restores Canada's reputation in the world. We must choose to be ambitious. We must choose to be fearless. We must choose our own destiny as Canadians, but we cannot do it as a fractured people. For too long, our politics has been defined by what divides us, and far too often our politicians have carelessly demeaned and even demonized one group of Canadians to appeal to another. I seek to lead a Conservative team that inspires Canadians with courage to address the challenges of our time and deliver results, because this is the right approach. Canadians are tired of the Ottawa circus. They are ready to face the challenges of our age, and it is long past time for the politicians in Ottawa to do the same. We are a nation 38 million strong, all yearning and striving for a country where everyone has a place and everyone has a shot at success. Ours is a country where we may not always agree, but we do agree that we live in the greatest country on earth and that we all share a duty to make it better every single day. So let today be the day that we tell those who seek to divide Canada that we're putting an end to the politics of fear and anger. That right here, right now, together, we will begin to write a new chapter on what government can be. It won't be all things to all people, but it must be a place where we can all come together and ensure that nobody gets left behind. That it must be a place where your influence as a citizen matters more than a few connected insiders. You know, even as I speak to you now, there are those out there who will seek to divide us. There will be those who dismiss me, maybe even attack me personally. Mes critiques diront que mon français n'est pas assez bon, mais je continuerai à travailler, je mettrai les bouchées doubles et je vous promets, d'ici la prochaine élection, je parlerai couramment l'anglais et le français. What the critics forget is that hope is infectious, that unity is strength, that our work ethic is the basis of our optimism, that we won't back down from a fight and we will never be deterred from standing up for anyone left behind. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are tired of the old status quo, if you reject the politics of fear and division, if you reject the notion that we have to settle for mediocre, then join us. Let us show Canadians the right approach. Today we stand for unity and hope. Today we send the message from coast to coast to coast that there is nothing wrong with Canada that cannot be fixed with everything that is right with Canada. And together we will prove that a small group of thoughtful and committed citizens can indeed change the world.
Thank you so much for being here. I'll start with some opening comments and then I'll answer your questions. Today we'll be debating our Opposition Day motion. And our motion today, our plan today is to speak to people who right now are having an incredibly difficult time with the cost of living. We've seen the cost of living continue to rise on top of the already high pressures of the pandemic, a global war, and we're seeing the cost of living increase to the point that families are really struggling. And I had an opportunity to speak to a lot of these families over the break week, over the constituency week. Spoke with families that are struggling with the cost of gas going up because they work in retail and in delivery, and it costs them more to literally work. Spoke with families that are worried about what they purchase in the grocery store. And one of the stories I heard was a family that has to put down groceries. Going through the aisle, they had to put down things they would normally purchase for their kids, for their family, because they couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford it in their budget because the cost of living is going up. And when we look at the cost of living going up, we know that there are some people that benefit from that. There are companies, there are large corporations that are going to profit off the cost of living going up. And there are people that are hurt by it. Families are hurt by it. Working people are hurt by it. And so what we're proposing in our plan is that shouldn't it be that those that are exploiting people, that are making excess profits off of this difficult time, actually have to pay their fair share and have to contribute back towards making life more affordable for people? Shouldn't that be the role of government? I don't accept that government can't do anything in the face of companies that are exploiting people. In fact, that is the role of government. Companies will exploit people. Companies will, if allowed to, continue to raise the prices of goods and services. Governments have to provide some way to stand up for people. And so that's what our plan is about today. The Liberals have proposed in the past election campaign to put a surtax on the profits, on the excess profits of big banks and insurance companies. They saw that big banks, like we did, were making tremendous profits, and that in light of that, they should be contributing their fair share. We're saying implement that tax, as you had promised to do, and then expand that to include oil and gas companies and corporate grocery stores, big box stores that are making record profits off this difficult time. That's our plan, that let's tax these companies that are exploiting people and reinvest that into supporting people that need it most. And that's what we're hoping to do. Donc, ce qui se passe au Canada à ce moment, c'est un temps où on voit le coût de la vie augmente. Et c'est de plus en plus difficile pour les familles de rejoindre les débuts. J'ai parlé avec les familles pendant la semaine passée. J'ai parlé avec les familles qui ont de la misère quand elles achètent les épiceries. Et elles doivent penser, est-ce qu'on peut aborder d'acheter cette nourriture ou non? C'est une décision difficile pour les familles. J'ai parlé avec une jeune famille, avec la mère. Elle a dit qu'elle doit arrêter d'acheter quelque chose, les choses que sa famille a besoin, parce qu'elle ne peut pas aborder le coût de la vie qui augmente, le coût des épiceries qui augmentent. J'ai parlé avec les gens qui travaillent dans les domaines où ils doivent conduire pour leur travail. Et c'est de plus en plus difficile parce que le coût de l'essence augmente. Et on sait, dans ce temps où le coût de la vie augmente, ça aide les grandes entreprises et ça fait mal aux gens. Et on propose le fait que le rôle du gouvernement, c'est d'arrêter les entreprises qui exploitent les gens dans un temps difficile. C'est pourquoi notre plan, c'est de mettre une surtaxe sur les grandes entreprises, comme les entreprises pétrolières, les entreprises d'épicerie et les banques, mettre une surtaxe sur leurs profits excessifs et réinvestir cet argent pour aider les familles à rejoindre les deux bouts. On pense que c'est le rôle du gouvernement d'arrêter l'exploitation de ces entreprises et on n'accepte pas que le gouvernement ne peut rien faire. Donc ça, c'est notre plan. On va avoir un débat aujourd'hui sur notre plan et on encourage tous les partis d'appuyer notre approche de dire que le gouvernement a un rôle à aider les familles dans ce temps difficile. Merci, thank you. I'm ready for any questions you might have.
So we'll start with the questions in the room. For the people on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. Nous allons commencer avec les questions dans la salle. Et pour les gens sur Zoom, s'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction lever la main. First microphone. Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Tom Parry, CBC. There's a work stoppage going on at CP Rail right now. I'd like to get your thoughts on the possibility of back-to-work legislation. Is that something that your party could support, or would you be against that?
We would be firmly against that. We believe that the right thing to do right now is to get back to the negotiating table. There is a strong, important role of workers being able to raise concerns and to be able to use their ability to strike as a way to raise concerns. And when back to work legislation is used so cavalier, we believe it should never be used, but when it's used in a cavalier way, what happens is then employers don't have any interest in negotiating with workers. It makes for worse work conditions, and it makes for an undermining of the workers' ability to negotiate fair wages and fair work conditions. So absolutely think that this is not at all appropriate to bring back to work legislation, and that instead there should be pressure applied on the employer to return to the negotiating table and to work out a deal with workers.
En français?
En français. Non, on impose un projet de loi pour forcer les travailleurs et travailleuses de retourner au travail. On est contre cette approche parce qu'on pense que ça nuit aux efforts des travailleurs et travailleuses d'améliorer leurs conditions de travail et leur salaire. Et c'est un droit important pour les travailleurs d'avoir la capacité de négocier les bonnes conditions de travail et un bon salaire. Et quand le gouvernement menace de forcer les travailleurs de retourner au travail, ça blesse la capacité des travailleurs d'avoir l'opportunité d'avoir des négociations. Donc, on encourage l'employeur de retourner à la table, d'avoir une négociation et de négocier une résolution.
On a separate topic, the war in Ukraine has gotten NATO members talking about increasing defense spending. The head of NATO is saying that he'd like to see Canada and other countries increase their defense spending. What's the NDP's position on whether Canada should increase defense spending up to the 2% of GDP that's been called for?
Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge that we are in a world now where people are certainly seeing that it is a scarier place and not the same place that it's been before. And so there's a certain, a real fear that we're in a scarier world. And I acknowledge that. And then the question is, what do we do in response to that? If we're talking about making sure the people that serve in our armed forces are able to do their jobs, are able to have the resources and equipment they need to do the jobs that we ask of them, absolutely, we believe that they should be resourced in a manner appropriate for the task that we ask them to do. But if we're talking about what we need to do to make the world a safer place, I believe there's many different approaches to that. And the role that Canada has played, and I think the role that Canada has been the most useful at playing, is a role where we're promoting peace, where we're promoting diplomacy, where we are doing our part to invest in international development to help countries get to a more stable and safer place, and our role in promoting humanitarian relief and support for countries that are struggling and for people that are struggling, and to do our part to offer that support here in Canada. That's the role that we've played historically that's been very effective and useful, and I believe that's a role that we should continue to play. And that's where I think we should put our resources.
So are you in favor of more defense spending?
I'm in favor of investing in the solutions to making our world a safer place that Canada has done in the past and can do most effectively. And that's humanitarian support, international development, and doing our part to invest in countries and people that need support and help. That's where I believe we've played the most effective role in the past and where we can in the future.
Next question.
Good morning, Mr. Singh. Bill Curry from the Globe and Mail. You mentioned in your opening comments concern about constituents and the price of groceries. You're proposing a tax on grocery companies, so it's not surprising that they would probably say that if faced with such a tax, they would pass on that cost to consumers. So wouldn't your proposal make things worse for the person in the grocery aisles?
What we're looking at is companies that in a difficult time are exploiting workers. And what we know is letting that continue to happen without doing anything is just not acceptable. We just can't allow that to continue. So what can we do? What have we done in the past? We know that in the past, Canada, as well as other nations, put in profiteering taxes in difficult times when prices were being raised or people were being exploited. We decided that was wrong, and we put in place profiteering to stop that. And I believe that is what we need to do. We need to acknowledge that there are companies making excessive profits, and we can make sure that they pay their fair share and reinvest that into helping people out. Without governments stepping in, companies will exploit people. The role of government is to say, no, that's not right. And to say, we can do something to help you out. People need help, and we are proposing a plan to do so. Without action, this is going to continue. And we know that the Conservatives have proposed things like lifting the GST. Well, what's to say that a company doesn't increase the cost of their goods to make up that difference as well? The only way we can really get at companies that are greedy, companies that are making excess profits, is to tax their excess profits and to reinvest that into people.
With the budget coming up, can you provide a sense of how your party is feeling in terms of, are you consulted on priorities? Because in the past, they've turned to your party for support. And specifically on this tax proposal that was in their platform that you mentioned, they haven't talked about it a whole lot. Are you concerned that they are no longer interested in the tax on banks and insurance companies?
Well, I am concerned that they're no longer interested in, and part of today's opposition motion is to put that on the table to say they should be implementing that tax on banks and financial institutions that have made significant profits. They should do that as they promised to do in the last campaign, and they should expand that to include big box stores and oil and gas companies. So that's why we're putting that in the motion. We think it's the right thing. Probably doesn't come as a surprise. We believe that in this difficult time, we have been calling for profiteering taxes on pandemic profits, and taxes on companies that are making record profits in this difficult time. So that's something we're calling for. As always, during budget time, we'll continue to put forward our priorities, and folks will know our priorities include making sure we invest in healthcare, something that we care deeply about. We believe in pharmacare. We believe in dental care. These are things that we've long campaigned for and are absolutely important to Canadians, particularly when the cost of living is going up. It would help people if we could cover the cost of the medication. And we're going to continue to fight for reconciliation, justice for Indigenous people, help in housing, help to make sure that we are tackling the climate crisis. So these are all things that we believe in and will continue to push for.
Next question.
Good morning, Mr. Singh. David Baxter from Global News. In the past, we've seen the NDP filibuster items like back-to-work legislation, looking back to the Canada Post legislation back in 2011. If similar legislation came up in this labour dispute between CP and the employer, would the NDP look at similar tactics?
You can count on us to oppose back-to-work legislation. Again, the fact that it's already being entertained and it's already being something that's being raised before workers have a chance to negotiate sends a message to employers that they don't have to negotiate, and that's wrong. We need to encourage employers to work with people, to work with those that are working at the company, to negotiate a deal. That is the way we get the best work conditions, the best culture, and it's best for everybody. And so we want to continue to advocate. The solution right now needs to be negotiation and absolutely not back to work, and we'll be opposed to it if that's what's proposed.
I'm just wondering if you could also help me square away, the motion, like the motion you're putting forward today is about lowering grocery prices, looking out for consumers and increasing prices. But at the same time, there is a very real worry that the CP labor stoppage could see a similar impact. It's the start of seeding season right now. Farmers need their fertilizer. The vast majority of that is shipped by rail. If there's delays there, that's going to drive up grain prices even higher than we're already seeing with the war, since about 25% of the world's grain comes from Russia and Ukraine. So just how do you square away the two sides opposing back-to-work legislation, where this could be argued this is one of those extraordinary circumstances where it would be necessary to avoid undue increased financial stress on consumers?
Well, in one case, we've got the corporate greed of oil and gas and big box stores that are exploiting a situation and raising prices. On the other hand, we've got workers that are fighting for fair work conditions and wages. In that circumstance, it's pretty clear what side New Democrats are going to be on. We're going to be on the side of making sure workers get a fair deal, and that's negotiated. Nothing that precludes the employer from sitting down, negotiating, and solving this right away. There's no intention on the side of the workers to say, we're not going to be reasonable, we're not going to settle for a good deal. They want to negotiate it. But we know that big box stores and corporate and oil and gas corporations are exploiting people right now, are raising prices right now, and they're being driven by greed. And that's wrong. And so we're going to continue to say that companies should not be making excess profits, should not be exploiting people. Pandemic profiteering is a real thing. We've seen companies make record profits in this pandemic that continue to pay virtually no tax in Canada. And so those web giants, as I'm speaking of. And so we need to make sure that companies are paying their fair share. And that's what our proposal is, that we don't accept that corporate greed is acceptable in a time like this. And we want to make sure that we invest that in helping people.
Next question.
Yeah, you said you favour negotiations and against back-to-work legislation. But could you say, in the case of a prolonged strike, how long it would be reasonable to wait? How long could these negotiations take place before you think some action should be taken?
Well, I would flip it and put the pressure back on employers. We know that the employer could solve this tomorrow if they were able to negotiate a deal with the workers. So I often feel like the pressure is placed on workers when it should be placed on the employer. Why isn't the employer negotiating the deal? Why are they being unreasonable and locking out workers? Why aren't they sitting down and negotiating a good deal? So I would say the employer in this circumstance has locked out workers. They are not negotiating at the table. They're the ones that are actually showing an unreasonable behavior. Workers are saying we're using our ability to negotiate a fair deal and fair wages and fair work conditions. What they should be doing. The employer should be meeting with them and negotiating. And I think that's where we should be putting the pressure, not on the workers that are demanding fairness.
You said you wanted to tax excess profits by oil and gas companies in particular. Could you just go into some detail about what you regard as an excess profit and whether there's a formula you would apply?
Yeah, what we're proposing in our opposition to motion and our plan is talks in profits above $1 billion, a 3% surtax. This is something that's proposed by the Liberals when it comes to banks. They proposed it for banks and for insurance companies. We're saying apply that same mechanism, that same tax mechanism that you've proposed in your own campaign, in the last election campaign. Apply that, as you promised to do, to banks, and then also apply it to oil and gas and big box stores that are making these record profits. And so that's the mechanism we're looking at. They promised to do it, and expand it to those that are also exploiting people at this time.
And once again, if you have a question online, please use the raise hand function. Encore une fois, si vous avez une question en ligne, utilisez la fonction lever la main. Next question in the room.
So I just want to follow up on my question again about matching the consumer to your proposal, right? So the consumer that's struggling to buy groceries also buys gas from an oil company and pays bank fees from banks. So how does this excess profits tax that you're proposing help cost of living for the individual who's paying these fees?
Right now, without any action, nothing's going to happen. So the current status quo, there's going to be nothing. So prices are going up and there's no help for people. That's the current approach. We think that's wrong. And so our approach is, well, if these are the companies that we've identified as making significant profits, if we tax their excess profits, we can reinvest that back into people. How we reinvest that into people, there's lots of options. Direct financial support is something that we've done in the pandemic, something that we certainly can look at. Are there other programs that we can invest in that would lower the cost for families? One of the programs we've called for are things like covering people's costs of medication. That's a large budget for a lot of families. It costs a lot. We know we can invest in more housing. We know that housing and rents are going up in cost. We could invest in things like dental care, which a lot of families aren't able to afford now because of the cost of living going up, and they were just on the brink. They have to cut something, so they may be taking their kids to the dentist. So when we invest that money back, we can give it to the families that need it most, and we can invest in things that people need to make life more affordable. And so that's what we're proposing. The status quo is to do nothing. We think that's wrong, and we're proposing something that will actually reinvest money into people who need it most.
And this
CP Rail. Good afternoon. What's the problem that the CP Rail stoppage is creating right now in Canada?
Look, supply chains are incredibly important at all times, but particularly during this time. Both CP and the union understand how critical the time we're going through and how difficult it would be for further exacerbating our supply chain. So there's a federal mediator on the ground. We're encouraging both sides to reach an agreement very quickly.
And if it's not quick enough, are you willing to go with a special bill to back to work?
We know that the best way out of this is through a negotiated settlement.
Do you rule out back to work legislation?
We know that it is the most sustainable, best way for both parties to agree on an outcome. So we're encouraging them to do so.
So you're not ruling it out. You're not ruling it back to work legislation.
Minister Bibeau. Hello. Yeah, what can you tell us about what work your office is doing with Minister O'Regan or Transport to ensure we're not seeing grain shipments being negatively impacted by the CP rail dispute?
I can assure you that I make sure that Minister O'Regan is very well informed of the impact it could have on the agriculture sector. He's in Calgary following up the situation. Federal mediator are there, and as far as I know, they are still negotiating, so we are really hopeful that they will find a resolution.
Yeah, and what are you hearing from your stakeholder groups, especially right now we're getting into seeding, so much of the fertilizer is being shipped by rail. Just like, what's the worry coming from stakeholder groups that you're hearing?
The fertilizer is a good example. Animal feed is another worry, obviously.
There we go.
Farmers are obviously very worried for animal feed, considering the bad harvest we had last year with the drought. Access to fertilizer is another important issue. And we also want to move our commodities to other markets, considering that Canada has a role to feed the world, and especially when some countries are facing food challenges. Thank you.
They're negotiating. Should they keep negotiating? Should they be legislating?
Yeah, they should be negotiating in good faith. They should be at the table, and they are. And that's good. And I hope they come to a resolution soon. Stakes are high for the country.
Yeah. Do you think if it goes on a couple more days, do you think legislation should be prepped to bring them back if necessary?
You always have to be ready, but that's not the primary choice. It's not the best resolution. We believe in collective bargaining, and that's where we should be at.
But if we see this drag on for too long and start seeing supply issues and costs go up even further, what action would the government be potentially prepared to do, especially since?
Well, the government has to look at all options that are available to it. We know what the preferred option is. It's to be sitting around the table negotiating, and that's what they're doing, and that's good, with the help of mediation, which is important. Good. Perfect. Thank you all.
Oui, la grève au CP, là, ça cause des problèmes d'approvisionnement, notamment au Québec. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez que le gouvernement pourrait faire ou peut faire à ce moment-ci?
On croit vraiment au processus de négociation. Évidemment, on suit ça d'extrêmement près, puis on veut que ça se règle parce que les meilleures ententes se règlent autour d'une table.
Une loi spéciale?
Any thoughts on the CP rail labor dispute? Should we be seeing any kind of intervention, be it back to work legislation or otherwise?
You know what? Minister O'Regan has it under control. I think it's important that we get a negotiated settlement.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Any thoughts on the CP rail dispute, and should there be back to work legislation?
Yeah, look, we're looking forward to seeing what the Liberals present in the House. This is a long time coming. We've heard from the agricultural sector, the manufacturing sector, and this could have devastating impacts on a crisis that we are already in. Every single day counts, so we look forward to seeing what the plan is, and if there is no plan, I hope we discuss it in the House tonight.
What are the things that you're hearing right now from farmers, from other businesses?
Look, there's a problem getting feed for livestock, fertilizer at a time where farming season is about to begin for the spring. Certainly, manufacturing backlogs that were already there, and just the goods and services that Canadians expect at their doorstep. That all comes by rail, or most of it does.
At what point do we have to go to a back-to-work legislation? L'arrêt de travail.
Oui.
La position du Parti conservateur, c'est quoi? Est-ce que ça prend une loi spéciale?
En fait, ce que l'on dit, c'est de trouver une solution pour faire en sorte de ne pas bloquer l'approvisionnement, puis de faire en sorte que les citoyens canadiens et canadiennes puissent continuer à vivre et disons qu'ils ont assez donné.
Mais ça veut dire quoi, ça, ne pas bloquer l'approvisionnement? Ça veut dire
trouver
forcer le retour au travail?
Trouver des solutions. On vient de commencer un conflit, là. Alors, il faut forcer les deux parties à s'asseoir, à trouver des solutions. Maintenant, si jamais ça avance pas, je pense que le gouvernement va devoir imposer des choses. Maintenant, on verra, là. Écoutez, aujourd'hui, c'est trop tôt, là.
Donc, on n'est pas
une loi spéciale.
Une semaine, 2 semaines?
Je peux pas vous dire. Ça dépend de l'évolution du dossier. S'il y a des pourparlers puis la communication se continue, à ce moment-là, on peut continuer à jaser et essayer de trouver des solutions. Si c'est fermé, bloqué, ben là, c'est une autre situation. Il faut analyser la situation.
Fait que si ça se prolonge, vous excluez pas une loi spéciale?
On n'est pas là à ce moment-ci. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Should CP rail be legislated back? Should they keep negotiating? What do you think?
Well, let's get this negotiations done right now so we can get the economy back on track.
Should rail be an essential service? Should rail be an essential service?
It is. Should be.
Should they be legislated back? Should they keep negotiating?
Well, I will leave that up to the minister to make that determination, but we would certainly encourage them to consider doing something.
You have a CP line, don't you, in Windsor?
Yes, we do.
So what do you think, as a vested party in all this, should they keep negotiating if things bog down? We already saw your bridge blocked, so...
You got to keep negotiating, especially for a long-term solution. Parties just have to be encouraged to stay at the table and to work on that. Too many times there's been shortcuts where we've mandated workers back to work, and that's why we have the same old problems. So it's significant, but at the same time we have to support the collective agreement process.
If it goes past the weekend, your bridge was blocked, a lot of your auto plants were put in jeopardy.
That was illegal, and actually the transport trucks actually produce more of the stuff for just-in-time delivery that ever goes on rail. So they're different types of commodities. Very serious though as well, and just encourage the parties to get there because we need long-term solutions here. And just undermining it by a few hours is not the way to go. Long-term solutions with a collective agreement is going to make it stronger and more profitable and more efficient for us in the future. Every time we do a shortcut by intervening, it doesn't work out, and that's why we're back to where we're at. Thank you.
Yeah, no, they've got to stay at the table and get a deal. I think that's the important thing. The union's issues that they've brought to the company are important ones, and we have a collective bargaining process for a reason. We want to see them work out a deal, and obviously time is of the essence, but we're encouraging both parties to stay at the table.
Now, if things drag on for a couple more days, Port of Vancouver, things have got to keep moving, so...
For sure, I think that puts a lot of pressure on the negotiations, absolutely. But, we need the negotiating process to be respected. Mediation is an important tool in the mix as well, but, it's important that these issues are heard.
Great. Thanks
All right,
for
thanks so
this
much.
background. Good to see you.
I have a few questions about procurement.
Yes.
All the masks that we're buying in Canada, all the gloves,
Yes.
a lot of them are still coming from outside the country.
Yeah.
And even though the Canada... in the beginning of the pandemic said we're going to be self-sufficient.
Yes.
We're not self-sufficient. What happened?
So if you look at the contracts that we have with like 3M and Medicom, we have contracts for millions of masks. Those are being manufactured right here in Canada. So all along, of course, with procurement, we want to support Canadian businesses. It was the businesses that actually pivoted, retooled, and stepped up that we are so grateful for. So we're going to continue to do what we can to support small businesses, medium-sized businesses, SMEs, because we know that they're the backbone of our country, and we want to continue to support them.
Out of $8 billion that was spent on PPEs,
yes.
Only $2.5 billion went to Canadian companies, which means only 30%. So 70% is still coming from outside the country. How do you reconcile that?
Okay, so let me just correct you on the numbers. $42 of every 42% of the money that we spent with respect to procurement of PPE was Canadian companies that we had spent that money on.
Including protected amount contracts, right?
Those are the contracts that we've had in order to procure the
Fair
PPE.
enough.
What I would say
is
this. You have to remember that at the beginning of this, we had to procure supplies, equipment, and PPE that we needed immediately. So those resources weren't there immediately. So we weren't going to jeopardize the health and safety of Canadians. We wanted to make sure that provinces and territories could rely on us, and we would provide them with the PPE and the medical supplies, et cetera, that they needed. And we did. Successfully, we did do that. In terms of moving forward, of course, we want to support production, local production, but that's why it's so good to see companies like 3M and Medicom making those products.
We've spoken to a lot of companies that were given grants by the government to retrofit their companies to be able to make those masks. And now they're not getting any procurement from the government, and some of them had to go into receivership. So how do you explain that on one hand the government is giving monies to companies to retrofit to make masks, and on the second hand, on the other, you guys are not giving them contracts?
Well, I'm not sure of the allegation that you're making there. What I
no,
would
it's
say
true.
is
I've got at least 3 companies in southwestern Ontario that went
yes,
bankrupt, and they got money from the government to retrofit their plants.
So what I would say in response to that is we wanted to ensure that the health and safety of Canadians came first. we had to make sure that we procured all the PPE that we needed in order to keep Canadians safe. And that's exactly what we did. So there were those investments where you're making to companies in order for them to scale up to provide those pieces of equipment, because we never wanted to run short. And so we wanted to ensure that that support was there. And what I would say ultimately is, as we move forward, of course we want to support Canadian companies. We want that
but
manufacturing
it sounds that
and production.
we're not as self-reliant as we were promising to be at the beginning.
Well, we're always working towards that.
Still 60% is coming from outside the
that
country.
So previously, now that companies have come on board, I'm hoping that number goes up. And I can tell you, as Minister of Procurement, I'm going to do everything in my power to upscale the production here so that we can enter into businesses, contracts with those businesses. And we are doing a lot of things in terms of procurement in order to bring the barriers down for small and medium-sized businesses to get access to those procurement
One last
contracts.
question,
Yes.
if I may. There was a tariff of 18% on PPEs to import them in Canada. At the beginning of the pandemic, you got rid of that so you could buy them cheaper from outside. Right now, this has not been reinstated. Companies here making PPEs are saying they have to compete when this tariff should have been there, is not there anymore. Are you going to put that tariff of 18%?
I have to look
in?
into that, and I will get back to you on that question.
Merci, Madame
Thank
Tessy.
you. Merci.
Any thoughts on the mask mandate sticking around here with the mask mandate ending for the rest of Ontario?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd actually like to see them come in line with the Ontario mask mandate. I mean, those that are vulnerable want to continue to wear their masks. That's important. But for everybody else, I think we should follow along and open up.
All right. And yes, of course, the internal economy made the decision about a week before Ontario made their announcement. Do you think any appetite in your party to maybe push Mr. Broussard to be like, bring the board back together? It's like, hey, maybe taking a little look at these instead of keeping the mask mandate.
I think that's a great idea because we want to be consistent. At the beginning, when we implemented mask mandates here on the Hill, it was in accordance with what Ontario was doing. So for consistency, I think we should look at lifting them.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm going to call it right now. I think I found the single biggest productivity hack of 2021. It's this Google Chrome extension called Speechify, and it literally...
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.